In the case of nuclear or radiological fallout, people living around potential targets such as military bases and chemical plants may be advised to evacuate.
Well, hello, Sublation Media readers and viewers. It's I, Douglas Lane, author of Bash Revolution and Fall into Time. With me is author David Shields, most well known for How We Got Here, which is out now from Sublation Media, at least most well known on this channel.
Yeah.
And Reality Hunger, and a Christian existentialist and a psychoanalyst walk into a Trump rally, which is out now as an ebook.
I know. Thanks.
So
you have to nail the title, though. It's a Christian existentialist and a psychoanalytic atheist walk into a Trump
psychoanalytic atheist. Well, aren't they all atheists? All those psychoanalysts? Come on. But yes, a psychoanalytic atheist, and you're the psychoanalytic atheist, and your friend Scott was a Christian existentialist.
Still is, yeah,
and is. It's still, we can convert him maybe by the end of this episode. Ashley is going to hopefully join us. We've been waiting around for her, but she's not here yet. We thought we'd go ahead and start the stream.
Yeah.
Thank you for watching. Look,
so this is
Tuesday.
Live,
right?
Doug? Or
yeah, we're live. We are live.
I
People
see.
are watching now. This is live. We'll do it live. So yeah, we're a week away.
Is that right?
It is Tuesday.
Is that right? Oh my God, it's amazing how the whole election has been in utter. I feel like it's been frozen for about a month. Nothing seems to change.
Mm-hmm. Well, if you watch the polls, there are these micro changes. There's the up and down, and actually, in the last month, it's flipped. That Kamala had been ahead all through the summer, and then as we hit September, Trump edged over Kamala, but it's always been within the margin of error, so it's neck and neck.
And recent polling, very recent, has Kamala with a bit of I think a slight rise. I think. But anyway, we're all just guessing.
Yes, actually, in the last week, it's been like Trump was ahead in, let's say, Georgia by 2.5, right? And now he's ahead by 2.3.
Right.
He's been ahead by this, but now it's the best.
Everyone thinks they do a good Trump impression, except
I do a terrible Trump.
I'm terrible at it.
But I enjoy it so much. I do it anyway.
Yeah, I know.
You've seen it lots of times. No, but in the polls, like he was up by almost a full point in Michigan. Now he's up by a half a point in Michigan or something. I
think Kamala has to win Michigan, Pennsylvania, and Wisconsin, and she wins, right? That's her only real hope.
Unless she loses Virginia or something crazy like that. Yeah, absolutely. And Trump has to win just like Pennsylvania or Michigan or Wisconsin, and he wins. So that's my understanding. But it could be that I heard today on Twitter, the women are out. They're getting out early. They're voting in all those swing states. If it comes down to a gender war, I think the women are more motivated. That's what the people on Twitter are telling me. The Kamala Harris surrogates are telling me. But the reason, what we're going to talk about today is, you wanted to come on. You've got these two books. Both of them are really about Trump. I mean, How We Got Here is about Trump, but it's about more than Trump.
It's how we got to him, from Socrates to Melville to Bannon, as we like to say.
Right. And by the way, Bannon's out of jail today.
I saw that. Yeah,
looking well rested and tanned. So what we're going to talk about today is your analysis of the Trump phenomenon, what you think it would take to overcome Trump as a symptom of this moment, and how the Democrats are going wrong? Like what the big mistakes that they're making here in the final week? There's this New York Times podcast. I took a clip from it, and let's take a look at that.
Okay, I think that's a good place to start.
Yeah.
We witnessed something else from Trump over the past few days, which just seems notable because it's a continuation of, Lisa, what we started talking about in our last roundtable, a growing vulgarity and kind of deliberate outrageousness. Trump ended up speaking about the manhood of the great golfer Arnold Palmer. He called Kamala Harris lazy. He called her a vulgarity in front of the word vice president that began with S and ends with T. Felt like intentional crudeness.
Look, I think Donald Trump is trying to motivate as much of his base as possible, and he knows that many people in his base love that about him. They think it's authentic, they think it's real, they think he's flouting political correctness. But that, I think, does carry a real risk, because what we also know is that for the past 8 years, the biggest motivator in Democratic politics has been Donald Trump. Mm-hmm. And it's comments like that sort of remind people of what they didn't like about him in previous races. So I do think that's part of what the Harris campaign is trying to capitalize on in these final days. You know, there can be a cost for courting his base, and that cost could be exactly the people that Harris is trying to pull into her camp, these more moderate, probably more female Republican voters. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So what do you make of that analysis from the New York Times?
Yeah, I guess I'm almost more interested in Michael Barbaro's framing of it. I think Lisa Lehrer's analysis isn't bad, like it's, be like a decent starting point of what Trump is doing, that he's obviously, flouting political correctness, but the kind of apologetic way that Barbaro frames it, he's getting increasingly as if this were news, and just, he can't say certain words, which sort of gives them a taboo quality, begins with S and ends with T. And it's like we're at, like a 19th century tea party. And that, I don't know, it's just, I don't know what it is that gets at me. It's, just the earnest sincerity, the kind of mewling pleadingness, the kind of earnest New York Times based belief in its own worldview, and that mm-hmm. that they either understand or they, like, to what degree when the wrestler throws some other wrestler out of the ring, it's crucial that the referee or the announcer come over and say, Hulk Hogan.
Uh-oh, you cut out there. Let's see if you're going to come back. This will be sad if I'm here on my own. Oh,
yeah, every time I just have to be sure not to touch the computer.
Yeah.
But anyway, the point being, it's not exactly an elaborate or new point, but simply that, the colloquial term for this is, clutching one's pearls, or abiding by the rules, or referring to Robert's rules of order, or, pretending that the paper prints all the news that's fit to print, or that there is, again, the truth matters is or was the Times's banner advertisement. And so, I don't know, it's sort of, Trump needs those. Trump needs CNN. Trump needs the Times. Trump probably even needs MSNBC as a kind of voice of aggrieved liberalism. That without that, the joke doesn't even land. That if he's just speaking in the dark and saying Kamala is a shitty vice president or whatever, it's crucial that when the person exposes himself in the park, that person who exposes himself, he wants the person who sees his exposed large Arnold Palmer-esque penis to, it's really crucial when the exposer exposes himself that the woman or the man be appalled by this exposure, or intimidated by it, or snicker, or ooh or ah or something. And so it's as if, it's really interesting because, the psychology of someone who exposes himself is that they're craving the humiliation of someone being disgusted by the exposure. And so you think of the exposer, I don't know how I got on this, but you think of the exposer as being someone who's violating the norms of society by exposing himself in the park to, a 12-year-old girl or something. But in fact, he wants to be found disgusting or repelled. I think that tends to be the psychology of the exposer. And I think that's why Trump interests me. I tend to play two cards. One is a psychoanalytic card and one is a performance art card. Those are the main things I bring. You bring this very interesting
Marxist kind of analysis. Well, if we were talking about Anthony Weiner, I feel like this analogy about flashers would make a bit more sense. I'm not sure that when Trump talks about Arnold Palmer's manhood, that he is seeking to be humiliated himself. Maybe if he were to make a comparison to his equipment in Arnold Palmer's in the locker room, maybe that would be a moment like that. But but I do agree with you that Trump wouldn't exist if it weren't for the dominance of the neoliberal elite, the way in which the Democratic Party and the old kind of Reaganite Republican Party have joined together to create a kind of monolithic mainstream, or what's now being called like legacy media discourse. If it weren't for that, Trump might not be, or probably would not be, the presidential nominee, let alone likely to win the presidency. But if it weren't for that, then when he came down the golden escalator, he would have come down into a field of candidates who understood what was going wrong within the Republican Party, and there would have been someone who had their finger on the pulse of the electorate that was a lot smarter and less vulgar than Donald Trump.
I feel like no, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Doug.
No, so I mean, yes, Trump is a symptom of a breakdown in American politics amongst the political elite. And we can see it happening, like over the last year. It was exposed within the Ivy League that there was something rotten or hollow about elite institutions in America. When the October 7th protests led to a conflict with Congress, and that led to the exposure of a pretty widespread plagiarism problem amongst the most elite and empowered academics in the nation. So there's a feeling now that the political class is not the superior class. They don't have a lot of merit, but they're kind of mediocrities.
Completely.
I
mean, there's so much I want to talk about, and I don't know if Ashley is going to join us in a second, but do you have the clip, or do we have an easy way to show it, of that comedian saying how it was at the MSG rally? I was going to call it the MSG 1939 rally.
It was at that Nazi rally.
But it was this guy saying how Puerto Ricans like to have babies, and it's specifically when they're having sex, they come and he actually says this, he says that they want to come inside like their wife's vagina and that they don't want to come outside and that they don't, it's like he gets unbelievably explicit. I don't know if you have that clip, if we could find it quickly or
let me see. I don't think I have that part, but I have, like, when I Google it, I get other news like news programs.
You might get porn sites of it, but
no. I didn't Google coming in, cream pie.
Yeah.
I Googled
I forget the
Tony
comedian's
Hinchcliffe.
name. Yeah.
Tony Hinchcliffe. I can show a clip of it. I don't know if
Yeah.
I'll get to the part you're talking about. Let's see here.
Yeah, that would be really interesting.
Yeah, let's see.
See, I come from the D where we got shades and we be flicks. If you ain't from my state, then you should know don't miss.
Madison Square Garden, how we feeling, huh? Wow, isn't this special? 17 years ago, I was sleeping in my car behind the Comedy Store in LA, and I'm proud to say this is my 4th time performing at Madison Square Garden, the most famous arena in the damn world. The American dream alive and well right here. This is very different than where I'm used to performing, though. I'm used to nighttime with people drinking, not so many babies in the crowd, and people that are obviously only here for Lee Greenwood tonight. Normally, I don't make my political beliefs a known thing. It's divisive for a comedian to do that, but just know I sleep well at night knowing who I'm voting for. Yeah. When I lay down and my head hits my pillow, it is a fantastic pillow, by the way. I was staying at the Four Seasons up by Central Park one night, and I laid my head down, and it felt so good, and I thought to myself, what an amazing pillow. I have a little bit of money now. I could buy a good pillow. And I took the pillowcase off, and there it was. My pillow, my pillow, my pillow. And damn it, I bought 4 of them. And if you use the promo code KILLTONY, you can also buy 4 My Pillows. There's serious stuff happening, people. I live in the great state of Texas now. 18 years in Ohio, 20 years in California, and I got to see California turn to absolute.
This is going to go on and on. There's like 11 minutes of it.
Yeah, we can. I mean, even that sign is interesting. Trump in bold, then in regular type will, and then fix it. I know I tend to name check too much Todd McGowan's idea, his Lacanian idea of lack and excess and how much it plays out in politics, but it plays out in the Tony Hinchcliffe thing, which is, again, we could find it on our phone, the actual quote, but he's talking, and then I don't know if he ended up saying the stuff about how Puerto Rico is floating.
No, he did.
And that part of it was this idea of, he gets very, like how, I don't know what the claim is, but, like how Puerto Ricans apparently, unlike other people, like to come. Like it was like, and so my friend Jennifer Jacquet, who's a sociologist, who I sort of turned on to Todd McGowan's idea of enjoyment left.
Yep. He's cutting out again. I'm gonna interject something here about the Puerto Rico joke, the one that went viral. What he said was there's an island of garbage, or there's a floating, in the ocean, and it's called Puerto Rico, because there is like a garbage island swirling around of just plastic and stuff, and so it was a change up there. And then when you look into it, apparently he goes to Puerto Rico quite a lot. When you look into it, it turns out they have a garbage problem after the hurricanes and for other reasons. There's just they can't properly dispose of the garbage in Puerto Rico. That's garbage is on the beaches and garbage is everywhere. So that's what he was referring to, apparently. But when you don't know that, it just sounds like he's calling Puerto Ricans garbage, right?
And then, do you have the specific joke? Can you find it on your phone, like the coming joke?
Oh, well, let's see. Yeah. I guess so. You really want to hear the talk about the coming. All right. So let's see if I can get that. Yeah. I'm typing in Tony. This is very risky. Tony Hinchcliffe orgasm. Madison Square
Right.
Garden.
Right.
Let's see what happens.
Or just Tony Hinchcliffe, Puerto Rico coming. That should get us there.
Okay, here's a minute of it. Okay. This might be it. I can't guarantee it. But let's see what he says here.
Stuff is really, really crazy. We're right there by a wide open border. Where are my proud Latinos at tonight? You guys see what I mean? It's wide open. There's so many of them. It's absolutely incredible. Believe it or not, people, I welcome migrants to the United States of America with open arms. And by open arms, I mean like this. It's wild. And these Latinos, they love making babies, too. Just know that. They do. They do. There's no pulling out. They don't do that. They come inside, just like they did to our country. Republicans are the party with a good sense of humor. Free speech is under attack, people. I host this show, and each week I get updates what words we're allowed to use and not use anymore. It's happening.
All right.
That
You
makes
got to
it
hear
pretty,
it.
Yeah, that makes it pretty explicit in the sense that they don't like to pull out. They come inside just like they did to our country, which has like multiple meanings. It's just almost like, it's ideas that they're coming inside of our country, but it's also the idea that like we're like the motherland and they're kind of like violating us or raping us. And it's a powerful, and it's sort of hat tip to my friend Jennifer Jacquet, who's a sociologist who's written these good books on various topics, because that she and I were talking about McGowan's work, and
go on. You're getting heckled. I shouldn't have put the hecklers on the screen.
Okay.
But go.
Yeah.
The point is he is a comic who became famous for hosting roasts, and roasting celebrities, I guess. I haven't seen his work before this, but that's what I've heard. And
right.
there's lots of psychosexual connotations in these roasts. They always walk the line of from being funny to being kind of disturbing, I found.
Right. I mean, obviously it's a joke, but I think to me we're here to talk about its political valence, and that I guess to me the interesting part is that it makes explicit this idea of enjoyment, left and right. Like it makes unbelievably explicit Todd McGowan's theories about how the right leans into enjoyment as political rhetoric. And I was asking, Jennifer, I was saying, like, what should the left or the Democrats or left-wing media say in response to that? I was saying, what should Kamala Harris said? And all Jennifer and I could come up with was something like, that she just said something like, we welcome you to our country, or something like that, like the kind of earnest, liberal, sincere point of view. And so how do you,
over the weekend, I'm going to back you up on this point about like a McGowan's Lacanian analysis of the difference between left-wing enjoyment and right-wing enjoyment. And
right.
I do think most of the time in the Democratic Party, they are right-wingers in terms of their forms of enjoyment. Calling J.D. Vance weird the way they did, for instance, is a right-wing way to enjoy. It's ostracizing the other, stigmatizing the other, in just the same way, structurally and formally, as even more directly than something like this. George Lopez is a Mexican comic. He was at a rally for Kamala Harris over the weekend. And he told a joke about how he understands Kamala Harris wants to, I may be misremembering, but Kamala Harris wants to go ahead and build that wall between the United States and Mexico. But his advice to her is, do it all at once. Don't leave your equipment out there overnight because it will be gone in the morning, implying that Mexicans are all thieves. And the difference that someone pointed out to Vivek Ramaswamy in some news show was, well, he's taking the piss out of himself, out of his own people.
Yeah.
And that's and so like left-wing enjoyment would be when you recognize your own lack rather than project it out onto another.
And specifically recognizing your own lack, and that none of us belong anywhere, that we're all lacking, we're all non-belonging, no one feels like they completely belong, would be McGowan's argument, in my understanding. And that, it's hard to think of it. It's easy to think of examples of right-wing enjoyment of, the example McGowan gives is, what's the best way to kill communists? And the answer is communism. That for him is a right-wing joke. And then he gives an example of a left-wing joke in which no one belongs, and it's just not that funny, where somebody goes to this monk's retreat and people tell jokes by numbers. And so some guy tells a new joke by a new number and everybody laughs. And he says, why did everybody laugh? And he says, we had never heard that one before. And so like, it's, it's a little rococo. It's a little like, and, anyway, I don't know where we're taking this.
Well, I want to say there's a level of trying to understand the Trump phenomenon as a psychological, psychoanalytic maybe phenomenon, and then there's a level of politics, and there can be a political analysis that includes psychoanalysis and politics, like whether it's economics or nationalisms or what have you. But what I am most interested in is not so much how Trump manages to connect to his base and how he's managed to be such a challenge for both the old neoliberal conservative Republicans and the neoliberal conservative Democrats, but rather how he's been a challenge overall in this moment, how he's kind of stands in as a symptom of a crisis. And you were recently at Powell's Books with Chuck Klosterman. I don't know if people know who Chuck Klosterman is. And I'll just say this about going to film that event. I've been in Portland since 1991, struggling as a writer, having some little minor successes, but nothing to write home about, except I would. Look, Dad, I got a short story published, but nonetheless, nothing where the New York Times is allowing me. Chuck Klosterman, in 2003, wrote something that became a major bestseller. It sold nearly 1 million copies, I think, or I'm going to say in my Trumpian way, I think it was 500,000. That's what I read.
Which one? Sex, Drugs, and Cocoa Puffs? That one?
Sex, Drugs, and Cocoa Puffs. It's sold more than all of his other books combined.
And what is that? It's a series of, it's sort of rock criticism and music criticism.
Right. It's a collection of essays on a variety of pop cultural phenomenon with a kind of intellectual bent. I think of it as like kind of a definitive work which points the way towards what became excessive and sometimes terrible, but also was useful when it came to trying to take critical theory and political theory and make it accessible by talking about everyday life. Take it out of the realm of the academy and bring it to people who were feeling alienated. Oh, look, Ashley's here.
Yeah.
So Ashley, I guess there's a time shift.
Ashley just learned that apparently in the US, they did not, in fact, turn the clocks back. Well, they did in Europe. Get with the times, people.
Okay. All right. Well, so Ashley's here, but Ashley, I'm about to show this clip of David and Chuck at Powell's, and just say, when I was there, I definitely felt my own lack. Here I was with two writers from who were writing in the same mode that I do, with much more success, and I was pleased to be in the presence of you and Chuck Klosterman both. And here it is. I want to show this clip.
Into a crowd with the first quote on page 27 rather. Every act of creation begins with an act of destruction. That's from Picasso. Which again, it sounds beautiful when it comes from Picasso, in the sense that Picasso is saying that he had to murder the beauties of 19th century art, that he had to demolish those niceties. Then Zara, the surrealist, says, the interlacing of opposites and of all contradictions, grotesque, and inconsistencies equals life. Again, I can't help but think of Trump and his positions about abortion. He just throws out every possible position, and if you can't sort of dazzle him with brilliance, baffle him with bullshit. And so that, to me, it's a fairly conscious strategy to be aggressively inconsistent. It's as if Trump, to me, is this sort of closet surrealist or something. The next quote is from Andre Breton, who says, the purest surrealist act is walking into a crowd with a loaded gun and firing into it randomly. And you can probably predict what the next quote is. Trump saying, I could stand in the middle of Fifth Avenue and shoot somebody and I wouldn't lose voters. And then I end with Zara, the surrealist, saying, there is no ultimate truth. To me, that, again, without like praising my collage methodology, that to me captures where we are, in the sense that, I guess the question that I'm endlessly asking is how does Trump get away with what he gets away with, and how does he know to do that?
That was you and Chuck Klosterman at Powell's. I didn't get much or any Klosterman in that clip, but people who wanted to hear more of that conversation should watch the video that's about to be put out tomorrow. That has quite a bit more of that conversation in it. And I just thought that when I watched you and him, when I watched the two of you discuss the Trump phenomenon and your book, How We Got Here, and the epistemic problem that you were wrestling with in that book, I think in a way that is necessary right now, that if I had this desire to shout at you, I said, it's the death of neoliberalism. It's not it's not that we can't touch material reality. It's that the ruling ideology is cracking up, and that's what you're witnessing. That's what Trump is about. But how did you feel about the conversation at Powell's and the way? Would you say it's fair to point to you and Klosterman as similar writers and representing a similar kind of 90s era deconstructive prose that influenced by the Situationists, say, and the people like Don DeLillo and is that, are you coming out of that kind of moment?
I think one thing I wanted to do was to swing back to Ashley joining us in about 5 minutes ago, where to me she made a really cool stand-up move that, apparently there's a slight confusion on what time. And instead of, apologizing, that she did a kind of mini Trumpian move, I thought, that was very effective in the sense that rather than saying in this sort of, Biden-esque or Kamala-esque way of like, oh, gee, I'm sorry, I apologize for, this, that she said, hey, we have moved the clocks forward. Get with the times, people. I mean, she's just being funny and silly and playful. But to me, it was a really good moment because by jumping over the moment, she defeated it and moved on. And it was I just thought it was very adroit rhetorically. And it's much more interesting than saying, oh, gee, I'm sorry, I'm late. It was funny, but also mildly transgressive by blaming us for not turning the clocks back.
I thought she was being very nasty to me, and this just reflects the arrogance of the Europeans.
And then,
first of all, right. I almost got away with it. Second of all, I got nothing to apologize for. I moved out here for every single meeting that I had this week. It takes two to tango here,
Right.
Doug, you should know that the United States is not the center of the universe. I will turn this into a leftist thing now. And
You're wrong about that. The United States is absolutely the center of the universe. We're the greatest country that's ever been. All right.
But anyway, I mean, we can disagree or agree, but anyway, I just thought the point wasn't to over-worry this incredibly trivial thing, but rather that it does speak to different rhetorical styles that, it was sort of very elegant and funny, and that it kind of retired the issue in a way that it strikes me as what, again, McGowan calls right-wing enjoyment, whereas exactly as Kyle says, always double down. Whereas, the Biden, you could look at Tim Walz or Kamala or Biden, there's a tendency to say, oh,
you broke up again. Did you touch your computer? Don't touch your computer.
Alas. And so anyway, that was my only little point. I don't know about, I think Chuck Klosterman and I are very different writers. He's, he's maybe almost a generation, I'm in my late 60s. He's in his mid 50s, I think. So I feel like we come from a different cultural moment. I think of him as more of a cultural journalist who's written, I think he's writing a book now on football. He's written on music, on the 90s. I don't know. I guess there's some overlap. I think he's a much more, I would say, popular writer than I am. That my books haven't sold anything like as many as his do. I very much like and admire his work. I think, I don't know, to me, the differences are much more, I think you're right. Some of the influences, Baudrillard, DeLillo, etc. I'm not sure how fascinating that will be to general readers. Generally, I was really interested in the conversation with Chuck at PALS a couple of weeks ago. I just thought it became sort of clear to me how differently we speak, in the sense that, he said, well, how we got here is the title of your book. Where is here? And what do you mean? And I thought, well, wow, that's pretty, I guess in a way he was just asking the question to help me answer it for the audience. Or he said, what do you mean about the death of God? What, I don't really understand that. And I was like, okay, well, that's interesting. That I thought that was a given. And so I felt like that he and I thought he asked good, lively, sort of questioning questions. And I felt like it became apparent to me that we're, sort of sympathetic to each other's work, but are finally working very, very differently. I think, I don't know how I'd be probably the last person to try to explain the differences, but I'm not struck by how we're similar.
Well, I wasn't, I'm not talking about the prose itself, but just the sensibility or the, you are, I'll say this, you are more rigorous in your analysis, and Klosterman seemed to allow himself to enjoy John Cusack, say, or Cocoa Puffs on a more everyday kind of level, and then dare to write about that kind of enjoyment. But nonetheless, I did think that I did feel like maybe I was distinct from the two of you, and because I was wanting to shout, it's about neoliberalism, and neither of you really arrived at a political conversation.
What would that actually like? I think to me the most interesting moment in the conversation, which I wish that we had explored more fully, was when Chuck said something like, that he himself is a writer of nonfiction, of journalism, of essay, and that he says his main thing is to make the work enjoyable or sort of entertaining for the reader. And someone in the audience, that fellow in the back, I thought said an interesting question. Was, he was trying to put some pressure on that idea that, for Chuck, I think the questioner was sort of saying, well, Chuck, if your idea is that the goal is to entertain as opposed to, truth telling or rigorous sort of philosophical investigation or deep personal spelunking, then to what degree is nonfiction a form of lying? To what degree is fiction a form of fiction? And at that point, that we're pretty close into the kinds of territory that I want to explore, and that I think Trump exploits in a really brilliant way. And I think Chuck and I both talked about maybe very, very, very slight complicity that each of us feel as writers of personal essay, in which we take enormous poetic liberties with literal truth in small ways, and the ways in which that might be related to sort of the kidnapping of philosophical principles and making them politically weaponized. So I think that was interesting to me. I think I think the idea of resentment interests me a lot. I don't know, somehow I'm really interested in exploring my own kind of existential resentment, or just sort of feeling of non-belonging. And I think, again, I don't think that's Chuck's mode. I don't think he's like deeply dark in that way. And I think, again, trying to connect it to this larger political question, I think it's impossible to overestimate to what degree in the whole Queens Manhattan resentment, how Trump wants to be part of this sort of blue blood society and is forever banned from it, the way he explores that and then sort of exports it out to a wider populace. I think it's really, really crucial. I mean, when you say the death of neoliberalism, like, how would you define that in concrete terms, given sort of Chuck's and
there's a couple of ways, but okay. First, before I define the death of neoliberalism, I'll get to that at the end, because I wanted to ask you a question, but it's a rhetorical one to an extent and long-winded. So prepare for that. If we could imagine that today most people felt as though, and in fact they felt this way because it was true, that they could influence the direction of the country and the politics and the policies that were enacted federally and locally, right? If most people understood what was required in order to achieve their aims personally and politically, I think that the kinds of writings that novelists and nonfiction writers would do would be very different. I think that we would produce a different kind of art in a world where people did not feel, as Benjamin Studebaker has said, I think it was the subtitle of his most recent book about American democracy in crisis. It's called "The Way Is Shut." That we're at an impasse politically. That the people cannot influence their leaders, and the leaders cannot overcome the people's problems. Those are the two things that we're dealing with when it comes to the current death of neoliberalism. I put this all up. I say this all in a roundabout way of announcing that the Sublation magazine site is back up again, the old one. And if you can go and read Benjamin Studebaker's latest piece, and it's on something prosaic and mundane. It's on the Medicare for All campaign that he thinks still needs to be taken up. But there was a point in the piece where he accepts that there's one objection to returning to the Medicare for All campaign, which is that it would require working through the Democratic Party to achieve it, because it's a policy that would have to be enacted by the federal government. It would either require working through the Democrats or through the Republicans, and neither party is going to be likely to take that up or really see that through. That both parties are immune to citizen pressure in that direction. So when I say the death of neoliberalism, what I'm talking about is the way in which the economic crisis of 2008 has led to a need to restructure society politically, and the way in which that has exposed the degree to which these things are happening outside of the realm of democratic politics, and all the ways in which everyday people are blocked from realizing even minor reformist goals. So that's
right.
That's what I would say.
Right. I don't know. Do you want to jump in, Ashley?
Yeah, I was just going to say, I mean, and it also, the sort of breakdown of the neoliberal order also kind of entails this disorientation on the part of elites or those in power, those who are attached to the older ways of doing things. They know that the old solutions don't work, but they also have nothing else. And so they kind of hope to hang on to some kind of semblance of order, even as things break down. And so they become very frenetic about things like disinformation, because they know that the control over narratives and so on is slipping away from them, but they also have nothing else to put in its place. So they become quite frenetic about, people like Trump. They get sort of, and in fact, they sort of gain a lot of meaning from Trump. This sort of, I want to say this like I'm trying not to complicate it by bringing in my post-liberalism thing, but these sort of post-liberals who don't believe in autonomy, that sort of thing, they gain a lot of meaning and purpose from a figure like Trump, even as they hate him, because it's his threat, the threat of, what he stands for and breakdown and all these sorts of things that then gives them meaning where there's a vacuum there, where there's nothing for them to stand for anymore. And they know that their old policies, or they may vaguely sense that their old policies are losing grasp. So like one of the powerful ways that people have gained, neoliberals of the variety that came into power in the leftish version in the 90s, one of the ways that they gained legitimacy, or that they gave a sense to their mission, was things like health promotion and more energy expended on the control of everyday life, supposedly for like the prevention of disease, the prevention of social problems, promotion of mental health or self-esteem at the time, all these sorts of things. And they know that people resent that and they hate it, but they also have, and this is sort of waning, but they have nothing else. And so they sort of throw all in on a figure like Trump. And they want to go back to that old, comfortable kind of neoliberal governance of everyday life. But they feel like a figure like Trump just keeps them away from it. But Trump comes in and he's like the carnivalesque relief of all of this tension. And so he says the unsayable. Everyone goes, but then terrible things happen and the order breaks down, and then the adults can come back into the room and kind of save the day, which is how I understand Biden. So that's kind of the situation in which in which we are at the moment. I'm not sure if that adds anything. We're totally class of fiction.
No, that's really, I think I can't help but want to, what Ashley was saying, either consciously or unconsciously, is a very strong echo of a passage which I use as the epigraph to my book, Nobody Hates Trump More Than Trump. It comes from from Adam Curtis's movie Hypernormalization of 2016. And I just think Curtis says it extraordinarily well. We live in a strange time. Extraordinary events keep happening that undermine the stability of our world. Yet those in control seem unable to deal with it. No one has any vision of a different or a better kind of future. Over the past 40 years, rather than face up to the real complexities of the world, politicians, financiers, and technological utopians retreated. They constructed a simpler version of the world in order to hang on to power. As this fake world grew, all of us went along with it because the simplicity was reassuring. Even those who thought they were attacking the system, the radicals, the artists, the musicians, and our whole counterculture, actually became part of the trickery because they too had retreated into the make-believe world, which is why their opposition has no effect and nothing ever changes. I just think that's a really strong and powerful way of saying, in a different way, what Ashley said.
Yeah. I think that to underscore it in a different way, we we were promised that Biden would come in as the adult and put everything back in order. But what happened during those 4 years was that the crisis of neoliberalism only deepened. We ended up with two proxy wars, inflation, and an undermining of a continued undermining of the institutions of authority within neoliberal society. So that at this point, I think only 32% of Americans have confidence in their doctors' ability to give expert opinion. After COVID, there's just been a complete decimation of institutional expert authority. So the Biden was supposed to come in representing that technocratic power, and the technocrats failed. And so now, or at least we'll see to what extent most people believe, the majority of people believe that the technocrats failed. And that's one of the ways this election can be framed. Is it, do you have confidence in the technocratic neoliberal order or not? And of course, that kind of framing is only setting us up to be massively disappointed and filled with resentment towards the Republicans, because they're bound to fail to overcome these problems as well in the next 4 years if Trump gets elected. But so I feel like, as someone on the left, the task is to try to think beyond this particular moment and organize differently. So this is going to go into the advert for the campaign for a socialist party, but I think there are opportunities here to understand what's gone wrong with the American Revolution or the American dream, or with socialism as a world project, or with Europe, or with Africa. What's gone wrong over the last 100 years, because all these bits of histories are coming up in this campaign. Like Trump compared himself to McKinley in his interview with Joe Rogan. The ways in which he's kind of throwing just various policies and political ideas out onto the table without any real rhyme or reason is an opportunity for people who want to critique the politics of neoliberalism and of capitalism itself.
Yeah,
David.
I mean, and you guys jump in. You guys are more. I think I'm again. you guys are closer to being sort of political scientists than I'm very interested in this moment on Joe Rogan in which Trump just threw out of nowhere the kind of like, we're going to abolish the taxes, no taxes. And he just sort of, has learned from Roy Cohn and from others how to say it so it's just shy of saying this will happen. He goes, we'll explore no taxes, which is absolutely an impossibility, that the whole thing would be underwritten by tariffs. It's just absurd. And then Biden said, I think someone asked Biden, do you think Trump should be locked up? And Biden said, yeah, I think he should be locked up. And then he quickly, immediately retreated and apologized. And again, I guess I just tend to go to the same points, this idea of doubling down, enjoying the rhetorical excess versus always apologizing and dwelling in the lack. It just fascinates me. And I think you can see it constantly. I don't know how I sort of got to that from what you were saying, but when you're talking about all that, McKinley or Trump saying that he's going to abolish the tax system, and then just a couple days ago, Biden, fascinatingly, and I guess I'm still trying to understand it sort of psychologically and politically and rhetorically and performatively, how is it? I still don't totally get it. That's why I keep on writing books about it. How is it that when Biden says, yeah, lock him up, he quickly has to apologize, whereas Trump can say, I could shoot someone on Fifth Avenue and no one blinks an eye. I'm still trying to understand that. And I've written, as you say, 3 books trying to understand it.
Oh, yeah, because, well, first of all, apologizing is exactly what the groveling left always does. It's just a signifier, right? The fact that I am the type to apologize, and then the right is like, no, I am the type to be unapologetic. I'll just tell it like it is, right? I'll just say whatever the fuck comes into my head. And that's part of it. That's part of what makes him so attractive. Because it is the inverse of that slick kind of politician that always says the right thing, and everybody knows they're lying. We all know that. They know they're lying. We all know that. And everything that they say, we know it's all a PR campaign. And on the news, they'll say, well, this is very interesting. Now, saying that you care about babies is very interesting strategy here. Why do you think that they've said that they care about babies? I'm like, well, they're trying to get the vote of the baby lovers. And everybody knows it's a pile of, it's all junk. It's all fake. It's, so when they're saying something fake like that, and they know it's for PR, and particularly if you are in the part of society in which institutions are not on your side, they're often out to get you. You have a not unwarranted distrust of institutions, which is then fed by the fact that these people are just saying whatever they want to say. So then it invites the question, well, what are they hiding? Whereas if you're just going to say whatever the hell comes into your head, we know he's not hiding anything because he can't to save his life. And that has a weird kind of appeal to it.
Of course. I think these people are making some good comments, some of which I agree with, some of which I don't. But this idea that somehow Trump is super gangsta is absolutely absurd. It's just performance. That this fellow who doesn't seem to like anything I say, which is his or her total right. But the idea that Trump is really some super hard guy. He's a baby. He's an utter broken baby, but he has performance chops. There's absolutely nothing gangster about him. He's just very skilled performatively. But the other fellow who put it about, Trump being super kayfabe, I did a piece with a pro wrestling manager, Sean Gorman, that we published in McSweeney's, and then the Washington Post reprinted, which I've always said, oh yeah, Trump has learned everything from WWE, which he has. And then Sean explained to me with unbelievable precision, precisely every move Trump, that he can predict Trump's moves 12 steps before Trump makes them. And so anyway, this fellow who was pointing about how completely kayfabe we've gotten, which is a WWE term for the idea that we know we're in a fictional world, but we act as if it's real, which is sort of WWE, which is what Ashley was saying, is that people know that he's lying, but it's really fun to go to a Trump rally and say, lock her up or deport all 10 million aliens or whatever. It's super, super duper WWE. And again, Sean Gorman explained it to me terribly well. So we're actually thinking of doing a weekly podcast about it if Trump wins. So keep tuned for that.
Yeah.
See,
I
there's
would
the
just
thing though about the. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
you go ahead. No, Ashley, you haven't been
Here's the
here.
thing about the lies. Sorry. I did apologize. I was like, it's weird because I'm a Canadian, right? Like I can't.
Did you apologize just now? What did you just apologize for? What did
he
you
was like,
say?
You weren't here, and I was like, oh yeah, sorry. Damn. I'm trying to get.
Oh
over
shoot!
this.
You apologize, and now you're apologizing for apologizing.
My self-care was to stop apologizing. I'm trying to progress psychologically. Anyway, so the thing about lying is that what's interesting about Trump is that he's constantly lying, but he lies in a way where it's like he has no filter at all. So even when he's lying, he's kind of telling the truth in the sense like, it's hard to explain. Like the left-wing lies are PR lies. They're carefully crafted to create a narrative, and a narrative that's going to be slick and nice and make sense. Trump just says whatever, and that's what has a truthiness about it. So you kind of know, like, every second thing isn't going to be right because he's half remembering some shit he heard recently.
Yeah,
they're eating the cats. Like
right.
He half remembers he heard this somewhere. So it's
part of it,
and that has an authenticity, a sense of authenticity about it, even though what he's saying is not true.
I think crucial is his control of tone. He's the writer Lori Moore, who's very aware of music, and then she talks about the amazing musical register to Trump's tone. That, like, sometimes he'll say stuff, he really manipulates his voice like a musical instrument. He's I mean, I think it's gotten less good as he's gotten older, and he's increasingly, I think, not as cogent, but sometimes he'll say stuff with a very flat tone, like he'll say, and so of course we'll end the tax system, and he says it in this very flat way, which both signals that it's no big deal and also wink wink that he's just joking. It's very very complicated what he does, both that it's less than what he's saying, it's more than what he's saying, he's totally joking. But if you're on the inside of the QAnon conspiracy, you know that he's not joking. It's so complicated. Whereas when you listen to Kamala, she's trying to do those Obama rhetorical waves, but she doesn't have any of his stage presence. She has a lot of Hillary to her, which is the sort of victim narrative going on. She has some Biden to her of a kind of neoliberal state. And I think what Ashley says is awfully good, as it often is, and it crucial to it to me. You can't somebody was kidding Doug about when is Doug going to talk about society of the spectacle, because apparently Doug always talks about that because it's such a great book. But you can't, I mean, that book is unimprovable. I feel like so many of the books I've done have been influenced by that with its numbered collage fragment. That book changed my writing life forever. But regardless of people teasing Doug about the DeBoard, I forgot where I was going to go. In an American society of the spectacle, it's obviously across all first world capitalist democracies, but it's very, very extreme in this country. More people vote for America's Got Talent than vote in the presidential election. It's utterly a society of the image. And in that context, Trump understands it's utterly performance, it's utterly show, and that his command of his voice. Sean was pointing out to me how Trump walked out recently to the Undertaker music. He was dressed as the Undertaker, a character from WWE. And Sean said, we are totally within kayfabe now. It's 100%. And it's like, I always think of it as, the Democrats think that we're still in the 1864 Lincoln Douglas debates, and Trump is running algorithms. It's just this total disconnect.
All right, so I want to flip this on its head and see what you think of this. You know, Elon Musk has this rocket that can be grabbed out of the sky, like it will land and be preserved, right? No one's ever done that before, apparently, designed a rocket that can be recovered quite like that. He's a Trumper now. He wants to create electric cars that are self-driving. Maybe we'll go to Mars. And, you know, he's kind of an icon of forward-looking imagination. Trump saying that he wants to eliminate the income tax and only use tariffs to build up the U.S. economy, and to reshore American industry and manufacturing is a throwback to like the 19th century, right? But it's when we let ourselves imagine that something that's been a part of reality since 1909. We even have a phrase, you know, the only things that are, you know, absolutely certain in life are death and taxes. And Trump comes along and says, oh, well, maybe we don't need those taxes. And Elon, I think, is saying, wow, death, let's get rid of it.
And the thing is, like, that's the essence of progress as well, too. Like,
right. So, like,
because we've been stuck in this moment, that's invigorating. Sorry.
Yeah, we should allow ourselves to be at least as imaginative in both directions as Donald Trump and Elon Musk. And you know, I don't think it's necessarily realistic to think that we could just rely on tariffs to grow the GDP and the federal budget. But is there some reason why things can't radically transform, especially if the neoliberal order is cracking up? This is going to be a moment where what was taken for granted goes away. So I think returning to the 19th century is more radical than being stuck in 1968 or in 1972 or something like that. So what do you?
Or 1943 or 1933 with the return of the most horrific anti-human policies. Like the horizon of our politics for ages has been like, yeah, I'm so radical, increase taxes. Yeah, I'm so radical, let's fucking kill the poor. Yeah. Like, now, how about it? Let's just throw this out there. I don't know. You got Trump saying, let's not have taxes. Let's just throw this out. Maybe we don't want to die. Maybe I don't want to die. You know, maybe I will. And that is like the essence of human progress, is like nature throws something at us and we say, no.
Yeah. Socialism has a Promethean side. The left has a Promethean side. What do you make of all that,
Read
David?
V. Gordon, just one more point. Read V. Gordon Child's, I think it's 1943 book, Man Makes Himself. He's like, you know, there's all this anthropology of the time of like calling people savages and so on. But he's like, you know, people will be romantic about, you know, village life in, you know, in the medieval period. Well, they'll change their minds really quickly as soon as they get dropped down there. Compare that to a book that's been written recently about human history from a leftist perspective. They're like fawning over hunter-gatherers. Oh, this is like the Garden of Eden, and now we're in the fall, and Child's just like, yeah, like human beings were, you know, and he's at the same time, he's not like, oh, these people are savages and horrible. He's saying, you know, all of humanity was kind of progressing through these stages, which is just absolutely, you can't really say this anymore. But and some people were still in like the Neolithic period. And then, you know, eventually we all came together and we're kind of sharing in all of this stuff. And we're going to keep going. We're just going to keep going. And he's like very clear that it is better to live in the Bronze Age than it was to live in the Neolithic age.
Ashley has excited her dog Marks. By the way, her dog's name is Marks, David. So what do you?
I like it. What do you make? What were you saying was Promethean, and in what precise sense?
In the sense of imagining. Well, the idea is that America will build up its industrial power again through the use of tariffs, right? So there's something. So we can imagine a future boom. It will be morning in America again. We can have a return to, the true power of American industry, and without having to rely on taxing workers through income tax, and in a way that where industry itself will be pressured by the government to build an industrial base and more jobs for everyday people in America. That's the vision that Trump is putting down in the Joe Rogan podcast. And I don't claim to say that the tariffs alone will do the job, and it doesn't seem very likely that that will actually come to pass. But the left ought to at least be open to the idea of some sort of, because that's hardly from the point of view of a socialist who actually wants to overcome capitalism. That's hardly a major change within the social relations of society. But it is much more of a dramatic. It would be a much more dramatic change than helping to pass a reform in some states that would allow abortions to 9 months or something like that, which would almost never apply to anyone, and which would mostly just be a paper solution for a non-existent problem. Anyway,
but I just think the only thing I would say, just as we or you guys tend to romanticize or idealize or theorize Trump, I think you're sort of romanticizing Musk, who's just a businessman. I mean, he's not digitally sophisticated. I know people who work with him at Twitter and X. He can't even code. I mean, he's not some great engineer. He's just a businessman. Like the idea that
I'm not. I don't think he actually can do these things. It's simply the aspiration that it makes people go, because people forgot we used to hope for these things. Sorry, Karen.
Right, but I think it's preposterous to.
Elon Musk himself is a product of neoliberalism. It's like, NASA used to exist, and now the state funds SpaceX to do a kind of crappy version of what the government was doing in the past. So I'm not really romanticizing Musk, but I'm saying on the level of rhetoric, we ought to be trying to outcompete Elon Musk and Trump and their visions for change.
To actually do what they can muse about because they have endless money. They always say, like, the rich live in communism, right? So for them, it's just endless possibility. For us, we live in capitalism. And it's, we want, that's the famous line from James Connolly. Our demands most moderate are, we only want the earth. We want what they command from birth. I flip that around, but they get this from birth. The whole world, we want it. We want it. We want that for humanity. Musk wants it so he can, somebody commented, do Amazon deliveries in space. But even the desire for it, the aspiration for it, reminds us that we used to hope for more. We used to hope for more, and now we get it in awful inverted forms.
Listen, I'm just noticing we are 5 minutes past the starting time for the second hour. It is 10:26, so we should wrap this up. I will say that a week from today, it's yet to be seen whether we're going to have two streams, but we certainly will have one. And the one that I'm most excited about is going to start. Well, we'll have two or three because we'll have a parrot room. But at 5:00 Pacific time, we're going to start our election night coverage. David will be back. Ashley will be there. Spencer Leonard will be there.
Clock will have changed.
Right. We'll make sure we know what time it is, and Chris Catron will be there. He says, Susanna Kleeman will be joining us, and I feel like this will be an exciting moment. I don't expect for the result to be known that night, but it will be a culmination of all of our pontification on the election, and you should all tune in between watching whatever you're going to be watching, whether it's Breaking Points or CNN or Fox News or what have you. We'll be here as well to provide some more chattering around the election, and we'll see you next week. And if you're a patron, come join us in the Patreon. Probably be about 10 minutes before we start that. And David, thanks for coming on to the show.
Thank you so much.
Thanks,
Thank
In
you
the
for your
case of
patience.
nuclear or radiological fallout,